Welcome back to Starkiller Base. Today we have the finals of the May 2017 Spring Kit at 401 Games. On the left we have Tim playing eQui-Gon, and on the right we have Peter playing eUnkar FN First Order Stormtrooper. Tim brought Echo Base to the table once again, which is the battlefield that gives you a shield, and Peter's bringing Docking Bay, which is the one that lets you play a support from your hand or discard pile, decreasing its cost by 1. It's a really interesting battlefield. It looks like Peter won the roll-off and has chosen the Docking Bay to be the active battlefield. This one allows him to take things like Imperial Inspection and Salvage Stand, discard them for rerolls, but then use the battlefield to put them into play once again from the discard pile, so it's pretty handy. So it looks like he's starting off with an Imperial Inspection, which is definitely not what a Qui-Gon Rey deck is looking to see. Opposite them, especially at the start of the game, because basically everything in the deck except for maybe one with the Force would cost 2 or less. So Rey gets a 4 speed, and then with the second action, some robes come out, which is great for first turn. And then it gets overwritten with a Vibro Knife, which gives the Rey player 2 actions. Actually, when he rolls in, will he get a 4 speed special? He does not. He gets a blank, a focus, a discard, and a 1 resource, which is pretty bad. And the question is, does he roll in Qui-Gon or does he do something else here? It's not a bad start as far as upgrades go, but that Vibro Knife can get tossed back to the Rey player's hand in about 2 seconds. So Qui-Gon rolls in, gets more money, so it looks like, I guess with Imperial Inspection out there, it's not too bad to get money, but it's definitely slowing down the damage for the turn. So eUnkar rolls out. He's hoping to get a Disrupt, and he does not. He gets a blank and a focus, and that Vibro Knife stays in the pool. So I think I'd be pitching to reroll, maybe keep the focus on the 4 speed. So the Rey player discards a random card from eUnkar's hand here. One thing ooh, that's a really good hit. He hit the Riot Control Baton. That's a pretty key thing in an eUnkar FN deck. Lets you get some good damage out there, and then when FN finally dies, he gets to redeploy it. So FN gets a Holdout Blaster, rolls it in. Unfortunately, it is a +2, which is not resolvable by itself. And he is ambushed, so he's going to discard. And he's re-rolling a couple of dice here, probably hoping to hit Imperial Inspection. He does just that with a 2 Disrupt and a +2 range. And he sends the Vibro Knife back to the Rey player's hand. The +2 on the Holdout Blaster isn't bad, with FN having a range side and the First Order Stormtrooper having 3 range sides. But it's probably not what he was looking for. You'd normally throw it in there, you hope to get a resource or something like that, resolve it immediately, and then when you roll in FN afterwards, you can do it again. The Trooper comes in and has his classic blank, and Rey focuses Qui-Gon's die to a 2 melee. It won't be unblockable anymore, but that doesn't really matter because there's no shields on eUnkar's side of the table.
No resources, right? No money.
So eUnkar focuses the First Order Stormtrooper's die to a 2 range, so he can put that 4 damage into somebody. And then, of course, the die will go back on a Holdout Blaster, and when FN rolls in, he can roll it out again. So Qui-Gon does 2 damage to eUnkar. And then Rey takes 4 damage in the face. 2 of them blocked by shields. It's really interesting, actually, because I find that FN is normally the person that dies first in the deck, because he's the one that's enabling all the action cheating and all the crazy shenanigans. But eUnkar definitely drives it, especially with Imperial Inspection out there. You'd probably want to kill him. So FN rolls in, gets a 1 ranged and a 1 shield. And the Rey player passes. So the eUnkar player's only got 1 card left here. Does he go for the reroll or does he keep it? It depends on what it is there. It looks like it might be another Imperial Inspection.
So right now you should have 3 cards in hand.
I have 3 cards.
Okay, one of them's a 2 cost for sure.
eUnkar can eUnkar him. There we go. So he's hopefully grabbing the Vibro Knife. The Rey Qui-Gon decks generally have really, really cheap cards in them. All the new blue events are really cheap, so I don't expect this to do too much. And he hits. He hits the Vibro Knife after all. Wow.
That's actually what I wanted.
Might have been a couple of them in there, I suppose, but probably not. So he gets 2 resources out of that.
I'll take 2 money.
And then the Rey player takes 2 resources as well. Unfortunately, he can't put the Vibro Knife back out because it's gone now.
Do 1 damage to Rey.
Rey takes the damage there.
I'll claim.
The Ray player claims.
Support. No,
And let's see what Unkar's got in his hand. Vibro Knucklers. There it is. So he overwrites the Hold Up Blaster with Vibro Knucklers. He gets to roll it in and use that resource to boost the side, which is pretty good. Gets to 1 melee. And he's going to pay for it and do 2 damage to Ray. So Ray's at 5 health left.
And yeah, I think that's the turn.
Being able to dump your opponent's hand even from the first turn is pretty good. If you put out a Vibro Knucklers early on and hit the 2 discard and pay a resource to get rid of 3, because the thing about the first hand is that generally it's got the cards that the player wants to keep, right? I mean, normally they'll play them out in the first few actions, but I mean, if you've got, you know, some cards that you want to ramp into that you were looking forward to, like a, you know, say a Planetary Uprising in a red deck or something like that, then it can be pretty good. So it looks like the Ray player found an upgrade that costs more than 2. He plays it out, rolls in Ray, gets a 2 shield, a +2 melee, a 1 discard, and a 4 speed special. That 4 speed special is going to be really interesting here because he can resolve it rolling Qui-Gon and then see if he can connect some melee to that Ray die.
4 speed go away.
Unkar rolls in, gets a +2 resources and a +2 resources. So if he can get a resource side, he can make some serious coin. He can also just use his action to see what's in the Ray player's hand there. So the Ray player's got an interesting choice here. I think I'd probably resolve the 4 speed special and rolling Qui-Gon. I mean, the dice that are on the table there aren't going to get that much better, as particularly with concerns to melee there. I mean, the one with the Force being at focus side would be pretty nice.
I change this dice through either the little spinny thing or card in hand to a disrupt. Will this trigger?
No, it's got to turn it. No, if you reroll it.
So the Unkar player was just asking if he uses focus to focus Unkar's die to a disrupt, will it trigger Imperial Inspection? The answer to that is no. You have to roll it, but you can re-roll. If he re-rolled the Unkar dice and hit Imperial Inspection, he could do it. So the Ray player is resolving the 4 speed special. He gets 2 actions. Action number 1, he rolls in Qui-Gon and gets all the shields he could ever ask for, but no melee.
And then second action.
So I think I'd probably pitch and re-roll everything except for the +2 melee there. With one with the Force hitting a focus, it's pretty good. The 3 range on it's pretty good too. All I know is that the Ray player needs to get some damage across the board there because he's starting to fall behind. But that's the power of Imperial Inspection. I was playing Imperial Inspection the other day and against Rebel Commando and Jin, and throughout the entire game the player never got to use any of their upgrades because they just kept getting returned. So the Ray player discards a card from Unkar's hand here, and Unkar's giving some thought as to what he wants to do. I do apologize for the background noise here. There was some vacuuming going on in the store, but it clears up in just a second.
I will spend 1 and
So he's putting a DH-17 out on FN. Rolls in a big blank.
nice.
It's really unfortunate when you do that because you can't resolve it and then do it again. So Qui-Gon is taking 2 shields and using his ability to put a damage into Unkar. Now, the thing about using Unkar's ability is the longer you leave those dice out there, the more likely you're going to hit something that is cheap. Just like with Kylo's ability, right? You leave that Kylo special out there, the longer you leave it there, the more likely it is you're going to hit a 1 or a 0 because your opponent's going to discard and reroll all this stuff.
I'm good at playing.
So Qui-Gon's putting other damage into Unkar with that shield die. And the First Order Stormtrooper is rolling in another blank. Unkar's focus would be pretty handy if that was the case.
Discard this.
So
Reroll.
Unkar's discarding air superiority and rolling in, and that's a better roll, but he doesn't have the money to pay for it all. So he has +2 resources, a 2 range for 1, and a 2 range for 1. So Ray plays guard, removes the +2 melee on the Ray die, and gets rid of both of the range damage sides.
Could be worse. Let's roll in the big boy, and by that I mean
FN's coming in here. He has a blank, a 1 shield, and a 2 discard. So the Ray player has 2 or 3 cards in his hand.
I need anger.
I mean, he's only got 1 die left in the pool, so it's not a big deal. But if you ever have a chance to dump your opponent's hand when they rolled in badly, it can be pretty fantastic because you basically lock in the dice that they have on the board there. In this case, it's not going to do very much. And I think he'd much rather try to re-roll that and get a 2 melee that he could turn into 3 melee against Ray there. So Ray's taking 2 shields from that one with the force die.
Let's discard this. Reroll.
So eUnkar's discarding to reroll. I think I'd probably reroll everything. I mean, the +2 resources isn't doing much by itself. You'd probably rather have the focus side to get more damage going there, but
So
maybe he's hoping to hit a resource side and just take a ton of resources, and there he goes.
I'm gonna reroll all these.
So he re-rolled. He got a resource, a shield, a 2 discard, and a blank. The Ray Qui-Gon deck is not going to be able to take advantage of the battlefield very much here, but eUnkar's deck is built with all kinds of supports like air superiority. Wow, pitches to re-roll and gets 3 blanks, so that's not very good. But he can definitely take $3. And then he's out of cards, so he has to pass. So that was definitely not the re-roll that he was looking for. Destiny is a pretty interesting game when a scrap dealer and 2 stormtroopers can fight against a couple of Jedis and make it an interesting match. I've seen eUnkar games in these sorts of decks where eUnkar's sitting there with a couple of riot control batons and a flamethrower killing people. It's pretty hilarious. So Ray rolls in, gets a 1 focus, a 2 focus, a blank, and a blank.
Now you feel what I.
And eUnkar has a ton of resources there, but I don't believe he runs Crime Lord. He put out Salvage Stand, so he's keeping that choke on. Ray player's paying 1 for Your Eyes Can Deceive You, which is pretty handy. Give eUnkar a taste of his own medicine. He's got a lot of dice out there that have shield sides.
Let's roll an eUnkar.
eUnkar rolls in, gets a +2 resource and a resource, and uses Salvage Stand to get rid of the Ray player's last resource. Will Qui-Gon roll in here and try to get rid of that +2 resources with his Your Eyes Can Deceive You? It's not a bad call, but it's not like it really matters if you stop the eUnkar player from getting 3 more resources. The interesting thing about eUnkar is when he's got those 3 values showing up there, you really need to be mindful of what you got in your hand, because even if it doesn't cost much and you're not giving the eUnkar player many resources from it, you still don't want them to get rid of the card that you're hoping to play. So Qui-Gon rolls in, gets a blank and a shield, and uses Your Eyes Can Deceive You to blank that +2 resource. If eUnkar's got weapons in his hand, I'd be surprised if he didn't play them out now.
Roll the Stormtrooper.
The Stormtrooper rolls in, gets a
Issue with resources this game.
2 range for 1. He can definitely pay for it. So the Ray player is resolving focus. He's got all kinds of options here. This is going to be pretty ugly here. It's looking like, what, 8 damage probably? So he focused Ray's dice to a +2 and a 1. And didn't use the second focus on one with the force, I guess. I'd be tempted to put Qui-Gon's to a 2 melee as well.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was the right idea. I mean, I was thinking +2, and then 2 and 2. But you need to be mindful of the eUnkar deck running the best defense and just taking both of those black sides out. So Unpredictable is played on the Qui-Gon die. It re-rolled into... Oh, I think he's re-rolled into a resource, and I think he was thinking about Doubt because he was about to take the resource, which he probably doesn't want anyway. So the eUnkar player has another action here. He's got to have no weapons in his hand, otherwise I can't imagine he wouldn't have played them out by now. And as much as you want to resolve that 2 range to get it off the table there's one side on the DH-17 that is modified. So FN's coming in here. He gets a
so cocked.
1 resource, a 2 melee, and a cocked die, which was a +2 and now it's turned into a blank. One thing that people do for cocked dice is if you can put another die on top of the die and it doesn't slide off, then it's not cocked enough to be considered cocked. It's a pretty good rule of thumb to make sure that there's some consistency in your game. You could also, you know, move the resources out of the middle of the table so people don't roll on top of them.
This was just ambush. Reroll 1.
So it looks like eUnkar is playing battle formation, which gives him ambush and lets him reroll 2 dice because he's got 2 red characters.
Wow.
He gets a couple of blanks. I mean, the DH-17 does have 2 blanks, so it happens, but FN is not being much help. On the other hand, there's 5 damage worth of stuff out there,
It's still me.
with the vibronuclears being able to be increased to a 3. The Ray player was a little confused there. He forgot about the fact that there was ambush on battle formation. I think he was just thinking it was a discard and reroll, but battle formation is an interesting one because it's basically because of the ambush. Because if it wasn't for the ambush, it would be crap. But being able to reroll your dice, it's sort of like unpredictable, right? Reroll your dice, and if you connect, then you can slam it into your opponent. It's pretty good.
I will discard.
So Salvage Stand is being discarded, and he's rerolling some dice. He gets a disrupt side, so that 4 speed is going away with Imperial Inspection. Gets a blank and a shield, so got slightly better, but not really. And then 4 speed gets moved over to the character that's not half dead. So given that the die was already resolved, that's not bad. I would have been tempted to leave it out there, and when Ray dies, it goes away. I mean, if you're worried about the shenanigans of being able to put a Vibro Knife down, roll in, resolve, he can just put the Vibro Knife down a Ray and then roll in and resolve Equi-Gon instead. So, looks like the First Order Stormtrooper fires 2 damage into Ray there, and she loses her shields. Equi-Gon uses Caution, removes 1 of his dice, and puts 3 shields on Ray, so there's definitely some survivability here, and unfortunately the FN eUnkar deck doesn't really do much with Vibro Knives. I mean, normally you put it in, you roll it in, you take a resource or do a damage with it, and then overwrite it.
Discard the last card.
So he's discarding new orders and doing some rerolls.
3. And this time the 4th.
He gets a focus, a resource, a shield, and a resource. So he can at least focus something to 2 damage. And then do 4 damage in total, or 5 damage in total.
3 damage to Ray.
Second 4 speed on a Equi-Gon. Whew. So the Vibronuclears hit Ray for 3 damage, and then Equi-Gon takes a shield and turns it into damage on eUnkar there. So eUnkar only has 2 hit points left, so if Equi-Gon and Ray can finish off eUnkar pretty soon, it makes Salvage Stand and Imperial Inspection a lot less useful.
So I have at least a potential now of gaining resources that I don't need.
So if Equi-Gon rolls in next turn with his 2 4 speeds, and then eUnkar rolls in and hits a disrupt side, the eUnkar player can choose which 4 speed to discard by saying discard the one that has the special, or discard the one that has the shield, or whatever side he chooses. So he's resolving the focus and setting FN's die to 2 melee for 1.
I'll do 2 melee.
The Ray player
Gain the
claims,
resource back that I just spent.
and then
And I'll give
eUnkar takes a
eUnkar
resource and a shield and does 2 melee to Ray.
And that's that.
It was a pretty close game. I mean, Qui-Gon and Ray have less remaining hit points, so if it were to go to time, then eUnkar would win probably. I mean, eUnkar being dead at this point doesn't really matter because the eUnkar player has so many resources that he can afford to put out whatever he wants. The only thing that eUnkar dying would do is, of course, lessen the choke on the Ray Qui-Gon player. So Ray rolls in, gets a 1 discard, a resource, and a 3 focus. Doesn't have that many interesting dice to focus with the 4 speeds and Ray dice.
I will spend 3, put Vibro down, roll it in.
So FN's getting a Vibro Knucklers, rolls in, gets a 1 melee. So he can put,
I will do 1
he only
damage.
puts 1 damage into Ray, so he's probably got another weapon in there. A riot baton maybe. The Vibro Knucklers have ambush, so he can put another weapon down on top of that one, override it, roll it in, and potentially kill Ray here. Further action cheating in the Spirit of the Rebellion meta here. Let's see what he plays. It looks like he's got a few weapons, otherwise he wouldn't have had trouble making the choice here. He overwrites the DH-17 with a Vibro Knife and rolls in, gets a blank. And that's another ambush, so he keeps going. Rocket launcher would be pretty good right about now, but looks like he might be out of weapons, or he's taking his time now. So eUnkar comes in and gets a focus and a 2 disrupt, and then use the Imperial Inspection to put one of the 4 speeds back into Qui-Gon's hand there, which of course he can put back out again if he wanted to. But I'm thinking that he probably needs to resolve some of those Ray dice, considering how close to death Ray is. I'd be tempted to roll in Qui-Gon and maybe try to get your eyes can deceive you to get rid of that focus on the eUnkar die. I mean, as much as you want to use the focus for one with the... that's not bad. Focus is Ray to 3 damage, which would be enough to kill eUnkar. I'd rather have focused Qui-Gon's dice, but there's only so much you can do. So Unpredictable gets played on Ray's 1 melee side, and then it goes to a blank, which is the perfect play there. Because now eUnkar survives, and then he disrupts the Ray player's resources. That focus is going to become pretty deadly when any of the other characters rolls in on the eUnkar side. Ray's only got 2 hit points left. I mean, one with the Force is out already, so it's not a huge loss, but obviously it's nice to have Ray alive if you can keep her alive. So Qui-Gon rolls in, gets a blank, a shield, and a 1 melee, and then he rightly uses Your Eyes Can Deceive You to blank that focus. I think that's definitely the right call. So I think it's pretty clear the eUnkar player doesn't have any more weapons in his hand, otherwise he would have been chaining off of that Vibro Knife to try to kill Ray before she got to do any of her stuff. So let's see what he does here. Hasn't rolled in either of his other characters yet, so Ray is definitely in trouble. But eUnkar is 1 move away from being dead. Oh my goodness, he did have another weapon, okay. So he's overriding the Vibro Knife with the Flamethrower. Rolling in the Flamethrower, it gets the 4 for 1, which is total overkill, but it got Ray dead and kept eUnkar alive yet again. It's interesting he hasn't played too much die control, other than those unpredictables, but he's still managing to keep things off there. Oh, Qui-Gon plays Synchronicity. Nice. Gets through that shield, does the 2 unblockable damage, and kills eUnkar. I think it's a tad late, but better late than never. I mean, FN has now got 9 resources worth of upgrades on him, and that is pretty terrifying. None of them are redeploys, so if Qui-Gon and Ray had been killing FN instead, this would be a very different game. But maybe maybe the eUnkar player would have prioritized redeploy attachments instead. So this is still anybody's game, I think, at this point, although the FN hasn't rolled in yet. He's only got 1 resource left, and eUnkar's not around to help him generate more. So he rolls in, he gets a 1 melee, a blank, and a 1 resource.
Stuff happens.
Now 1 with the Force rolls in, and has 2 shields showing. 3 focus would be nice, but 2 shields is never bad in a Qui-Gon deck either, especially when there's damage incoming. The Trooper's coming in and gets a 1 ranged. So that's 3 damage showing there, but there's some pretty serious damage potential on those rerolls. The eUnkar player only has 1 resource left, so he can only boost the Vibro Knucklers so much. So the Qui-Gon player pitches to reroll, gets a 2 focus, a 1 focus, a 2 shield. That's pretty darn good.
Okay, so now your potential damage output is 4.
Now he can either focus the 1 with the Force to the 3 ranged, or he can focus the Qui-Gon dice to 2 melee apiece and keep... It's a tough call. Given that Qui-Gon is about to take damage, I'd be tempted to keep the 2 shields, focus the 1 with the Force to the 3 range side, and then go from there. That's 4 damage, which isn't too bad, and you'll be at full shields again. And DH-17 gets discarded. And he's doing some rerolls. You might as well keep the Vibro Knuckler die at the 1 there, at least it's damage.
I've rolled enough blanks this game. I think I'm going to stick with the 1 damage where it is.
Woo, my goodness. Okay, he gets a 2 discard, a 4 melee for 1, a 2 melee for 1, So thankfully he can't pay for all that stuff, but I mean, I'd gladly take the 4 melee for 1. I mean, he's got 6 damage showing that he can resolve. He can dump the Qui-Gon player's hand, although he doesn't need a hand when he's got focus showing there. So the Qui-Gon player focuses 1 with the Force to a 3 ranged.
No.
Oh wait, that'd be 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you remove 2 cards from your hand. Let's do that. Order of operations, right?
FN dumps 2 cards out of the 4 from Qui-Gon's hand there, and he gets Your Eyes Can Deceive You and use the Force.
I'll do 3 into FN.
FN takes 3 from the 1 with the Force die there.
And all your redeploy is gone.
Alright, now I'll hit you for 5.
And then FN puts 5 into Qui-Gon, so Qui-Gon's got no shield now, and 2 damage on him.
2 damage.
So
I'll take 2 shields.
he puts 2 shields right back on there.
I'll ding you for 1.
And then the First Order Stormtrooper takes a shield off. Qui-Gon probably going to put that damage into FN again. I think the Qui-Gon players deciding whether or not to claim and just try to get in there first, but I don't think so.
I will claim, which brings
So here's the power of this battlefield here. The eUnkar player claims, puts air superiority in play for free from his discard pile, and now he's got a shield generator, which is pretty darn good. I don't imagine that Imperial Inspection is going to do too much, although there are some weapons in the deck like the flamethrower that do have disrupt sides. Qui-Gon put a second Force speed back on before passing. So you see, now that eUnkar is dead, FN doesn't have the money to put more weapons on, but he's already got 9 resources worth of weapons on, so he doesn't really need it. I mean, the only thing that's hungry about the deck at this point is paying for the Vibronuclears and the flamethrower side, but I mean, I'll pay 1 for a 4 melee all day long. The eUnkar player is going to have to start looking for some redeploy weapons to overwrite there, like a stun baton, so that when FN dies, it'll go over to the First Order Stormtrooper. And there we go. So the Vibronuclears get overwritten with a stun baton. He rolls the stun baton in. Sorry, I guess they're called riot batons. Gets a 2 melee and hits Qui-Gon for 2. Now, one thing about the Riot Control Baton and FN's ability is that if you choose to re-roll the Riot Control Baton die, you cannot resolve it immediately with FN's ability. You'd have to take another action, or you'd have to do it next action, and then of course you could roll him in and roll the die in again. So Holdout Blaster comes out on the First Order Stormtrooper, and having 0 resources at this point is actually kind of rough for this deck. As you can see there, the First Order Stormtrooper rolls in, gets a blank and a 2 range for 1.
I'm broke. I can give myself a shield each turn.
So the one with the Force has the 3 disrupt, which is obviously why the eUnkar player played the Holdout Blaster in the first place. He wasn't going to have any money. But I don't think that the Qui-Gon player was really looking to resolve 3 disrupt anyway. So in comes Qui-Gon. He gets a 4-speed special, a 4-speed special, a shield, and a resource. Is he going to use Your Eyes Can Deceive You on the 2 range that he can't even afford to pay for? Probably not. I mean, he's going to have some rerolls there. He doesn't need the second 4-speed special. So we'll see here. I think that there's a lot more dangerous dice to blank. So air superiority is used, puts a shield on FN 2199. So this is one of the interesting things about 4-speed here is that the Qui-Gon player could take 4 actions or queue up 4 actions and then just re-roll into whatever. I mean, he can technically put out 7 damage with those 3 remaining dice at that point, but he'd have to have pretty good luck, and FN would have 1 hit point left at that point. So Qui-Gon is resolving 1 4-speed special, it looks like.
So we get 2 actions?
But so, like, you can't then resolve this in the same action phase, though, right? No. Okay, cool. I thought so, but double check.
He could take both 4-speed specials and get 4 actions, but it looks like he's reloading. That's not a bad choice because 4-speed does have a focus, and he can always take the 4-speed special again later. So he gets a 1 melee, a 1 melee, a 2 resource, and a 1 shield. There were some pretty good upgrades in the Qui-Gon player's hands, so that 2 resource is probably looking pretty good, but man, the upgrades on FN are pretty nasty there, and Qui-Gon might not be around for the next turn. So Qui-Gon puts 2 damage into FN, which is not nearly enough, obviously, but it's something. Little known fact about the player on the right, he apparently is a 2-time Star Wars Attack Wing World Champion. Learned that the other day.
So I will now roll in.
Holy smokes.
That triggers
So
this.
FN comes in, gets a 3 melee for 1, a 2 melee, a 2 melee, a 1 resource, uses Salvage Stand to get rid of a resource, rerolls the Riot Control Baton, and gets the exact same side again. So he's got 7 damage showing there that he can actually resolve with the dice out there currently, which is pretty nasty. That leaves Qui-Gon at 1. So it's a matter of what sort of events Qui-Gon might have in his hand to keep those dice from killing him. And of course, if the eUnkar player discards to reroll the first or Stormtrooper die and the holdout blaster, there may be lethal damage on the table here. So we'll see what happens. It's not looking good for Qui-Gon at this point. If he could put 6 damage into FN and get those upgrades off the table, then that first or Stormtrooper would probably be dead, but a trooper with a holdout blaster and a Z6 is still pretty nasty. I mean, 7 hit points is 7 hit points, and first order Stormtrooper's dice are not bad, despite what people think. The double blanks is unfortunate, but I mean, 3 damage sides is pretty glorious, especially for 7 points. So maybe use the Force on the resource side would be pretty interesting, or something like that. If he had a Mind Trick in his hand, I'm sure he'd be pretty sad to see that resource come out and Salvage Stand take away his second resource. I'd be tempted to take the 2 resources and play whatever I've got in my hand to minimize the damage there. Let's see what he's doing here. He's definitely giving it some serious thought. I don't think that you discard to reroll. Oh, okay. He must not have much in his hand to do anything with. He rerolled and he got a blank and a 3 ranged. So that's not bad. He might have been looking for a shield there to blank something out with. Your eyes can deceive you. That would have been pretty handy. But if that was the case, he probably should have kept Qui-Gon's dice out there and played a little bit more defensively. So FN's taking a resource, and now he's got some money to do some pretty serious damage here. Uses the Force to blank the Z6 die, which is definitely not a bad call. I mean, he turned 7 damage into, I guess he could still do 5 damage if he pays 1 on the Vibro Knucklers, so it saved him 2, which is not bad.
I will discard this to reroll 1,
Alright.
2, 3.
Backup muscle is discarded to reroll. Wow, okay. That worked out really well. He got a resource, a 2 range for 1, and a +2 range, so that is not looking good for Qui-Gon. That was a really, really good reroll to get. Qui-Gon's got no money. Doesn't have the facility to kill FN 2199 before he resolves those dice. And chances are those cards in his hand are not going to do too much.
Unless you mess with me, which is not that unreasonable. Yeah, 1 in 6 chance.
He discards a reroll.
Alright, I will.
And he gets a blank. He was looking for a shield to try to keep himself alive. So the Stormtrooper's firing 4 damage into Qui-Gon, leaving him with 4 hit points, and unfortunately, he only has 4 hit points left.
Alright.
And that's the game. He tried to reroll the 4-speed to use Your Eyes Can Deceive, and it just did not work. Congratulations to Peter on the right there for taking the tournament. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be recording a couple of store championships over the next 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for tournament coverage for those coming soon. So if you like the video, please do like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out our Patreon, and we'll see you next time on Starkiller Base.